Coming up, a rare Midwestern heritage unit is on duty in the heart of the South. But before we get up close and personal with that engine, we need to look at the special features on this visitor from Canada. Then, one moment we're watching trains, and the next we're watching flames as a blaze begins high above an iconic Atlanta skyscraper. And we are go for ignition on one of the most modern locomotives on the rails today. All that and more is next. It's Monday, January 2nd, 2023 in Atlanta, Georgia, and first out of the gate is a CSX heritage unit. Well, sort of. Look really closely on the nose of the second locomotive and you'll see a Seaboard System sticker. CSX does not put much effort into these. I think they do this to maintain the trademarks of their predecessor railroads, but that's just a guess. Next up, a paint scheme that has aged really well. Canadian National has been using this design in one form or another for decades. These two locomotives were dropped off here at CSX's Halsey Yard the night before. Built in 2004, this is a GE C44-9W, although CN has an interesting way of designating its locomotives. Below the road number, you can see EF644G. Now, this is how I understand this system, and you CN rail fans, feel free to weigh in. E means General Electric, F means freight, 6 is for 6 axles, and 44, well, that means 4,400 horsepower. The lowercase g relates to the locomotive order number when purchased. If this had a lowercase a at the end, it would have been from the first batch of engines of this type bought from GE. The Canadian National Railways Historical Association explained this system really well on its website. Okay, coupled up to the GE locomotive is an Electromotive SD70M-2 or GF643D. The G is for General Motors. Now, as for GE locomotives like these, CN ordered them with some very distinctive features. Teardrop cab windows, and notice how they shaped the nose to match. This helps increase visibility for the crew. Cabs like these were also ordered by an Australian iron ore railway. Teardrop windows used to be common on older locomotives made by GE's competitor Electromotive. This is an EMD SD75i. As you can see, EMD eventually used rectangular windows. Now, I don't know what the plan was for these two engines today. Two CSX employees were moving them around the yard. Alright, our next catch today has the standard GE nose and windows. This is an older CSX AC44CW, built in 1995. It's in the railroad's yellow nose or YN2 paint scheme. And if you're wondering, that big building in the background is the Atlanta City Detention Center. Okay, now to the main reason I was out on that Monday. It's because of this. A rare Union Pacific heritage unit is visiting Atlanta. I caught a crew moving UP 1995 around Industry Yard in East Point, Georgia on New Year's Day. Of course, Union Pacific acquired Chicago and Northwestern in 1995. This engine, an EMD SD70 ACE with commemorative paint scheme, was unveiled in July of 2006. It's one of only 6 Union Pacific heritage units. As you can see, the paint scheme isn't a 100% match to Chicago and Northwestern's historic locomotives, but who knows, maybe this is how their modern engines would have looked if the company had made it into the 21st century. It was pretty cool seeing this thing in the yard, but when a fellow railfan told me it would be leading NS Train G70, I knew I had to get some more shots. So I set up here, an area in Atlanta known as the Gulch. Then, like many other railfanning adventures, the wait began. Luckily, there was plenty of traffic today to keep me entertained. Also, waiting with me was one of the most modern locomotives on the rails today, and EMD ST70AH-T4. On these units, you can see EMD brought back the teardrop windshields. They've also had to contour the nose to match. I love how electromotive diesel engines sound, so I was pretty excited to hear this thing start up. Okay, that was a little bit underwhelming, but what you're about to see will really get your attention. While I was set up in the gulch, I started seeing smoke coming from one of the skyscrapers downtown. I ran over to a nearby fire station and told them, but just as I did that, their alarm started going off and they were on the way. While all that was happening, the trains kept on coming. Eventually, the piece of equipment up here burned up and fell off. Fortunately, this was a small fire. I later learned this all happened on top of the West End Peachtree Plaza Hotel. It's one of Atlanta's most iconic buildings. And according to this Facebook post, the component that caught on fire was a transmitter broadcasting the signal of a local radio station. 99X was off the air for several hours. I missed a few trains while I was recording the fire, but the train we're waiting on was getting close.
NSL on a G70. G7, go ahead. Just give you a heads up, guys. They're going to CSX clearing circle. As soon as they clear, I'll get you south there to Tillman. All right, understand. Behind that CSX.
In the foreground is NS train number 174. They had that fancy UP motor. And, barely visible in the background, is the CSX train the dispatcher mentioned. After all that excitement, it was time for the main event. UP 1995, the Chicago and Northwestern Heritage Unit. If you didn't know, the C&W ran its trains left-handed, and this thing is on the left track today. After catching 1995 in the Gulch, the chase was on. The sun finally started to come out for this shot. G70 was slowly making its way back to Industry Yard in East Point. We're now just outside of the yard, near MARTA's Lakewood station. And after a brief pause, G70 was headed right toward us. They'd stop here for the day. This thing could definitely use a wash, but that paint scheme is still really sharp. I would describe it as both retro and modern, if that makes any sense. So, with the crew calling it a day, it was time for me to do the same. There's no telling when the next UP Heritage Unit will make its way to Georgia, but hopefully, I'll be there for it. Believe it or not, we have an old Chicago and Northwestern locomotive that operates right here in Georgia. It's on the Hartwell Railroad. Also, UP 1995 is not the only C&W Heritage Unit. Chicago's Metro number 90 also pays tribute to the railroad. These photos were posted on Metro's Twitter account. This EMD F59 PHI wearing the commemorative paint scheme was unveiled in August of 2020. In addition to hauling freight, the Chicago and Northwestern also pulled commuter trains in the Chicago area. Comparing these historic shots with the modern photos of number 90, I would say Metro nailed this paint scheme. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.